ladies and gentlemen. On page 7 of our notes, we're looking at notes 3.4, which are on finding vertices of quadratic functions. There are several different ways to find the vertex of a quadratic function. So we're going to look at all the different ways that we can do that in this video. So let's take a look at number 1. Number 1 says that a golfer attempts to hit a golf ball over a gorge from a platform above the ground. The function that models the height of the ball is h of t equals negative 5t squared plus 100t plus 40. But I apologize, you guys, that's a typo. So if you could just cross that off and fix it for me so that it would say plus 40t plus 100 instead, that would be great. Where h of t is the height in meters at time t seconds after contact. There are power lines 185 meters above the ground. Will the golf ball hit the power lines? So in order to figure this out, what I need to do is understand what this graph is going to look like. Well, I see that it has a negative leading coefficient here, so that's telling me that my graph is going to end up looking as follows, okay? So my graph is going to look this way, and I know it's going to start at 100 because that's my y-intercept. And I know that it's going to go up and then go back down because the leading coefficient is negative, so it'll open down, okay? And I want to know if the golf ball will hit the power lines. So basically I want to know, is my golf ball going to reach a height of 185 meters or not? Okay, so essentially all I have to do is find out, well, what's my maximum point? Once I know the maximum point, I can figure out if it's going to touch or not. So one option that I have is to just put it in vertex form. So let's go ahead and put this in vertex form by completing the square. Okay, so in order to complete the square, I need to, first of all, factor out that negative 5. Now, a lot of you guys are not showing the work out properly for this, and you need to communicate the work properly in order to effectively complete the square. So I'm going to factor out a negative 5, and when I do that, I'm going to have a t squared left over right here, and then, you know what, let me recopy the original equation. So negative 5t squared plus 40t plus 100. When I factor out negative 5 from 40, I get negative 8t, and then I'm going to leave the plus 100 on the side, okay? Now, on the side over here, I'm going to complete the square. So in order to complete the square, I'm going to take negative 8, divide it by 2, and then I'm going to square it. So I end up getting negative 4 squared, which is 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 16, but then I'm going to subtract 16 to balance that out. So then what ends up happening is I end up getting h of t is equal to negative 5, and then I'm going to leave the perfect square trinomial inside of my brackets. And then I'm going to distribute this negative 5 through here, so I end up getting positive 80, and then I also have plus 100, okay? So then I end up getting h of t is equal to negative 5, and then in brackets here I'm going to do t minus 4 quantity squared, because this negative 4 is the value that I get when I double it to give me negative 8, and when I square it to give me 16, and then plus 180. So therefore my max is going to be, and I know it's a max because it opens up, sorry, it opens down, so it reaches the highest point, so my max is going to be 180, and I can say, therefore, the golf ball will not hit the power lines because it only reaches a height of 180 meters. Okay, so it's not going to be high enough. All right, fantastic. That's one option. The next option is to put it in factored form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my initial equation. So h of t equals negative 5t squared plus 40t plus 100. So I'm going to say h of t is equal to, now I'm going to factor out a negative 5 as my GCF. So I end up getting t squared minus 8t, sorry, minus 20 over here, okay? So then I end up getting h of t equals, and this right here is a trinomial that I can factor. So I'm going to put negative 5, and then I'm going to use t here and t here, and then factors of 20 that I can use could be 10 and 2. So then I'm going to use a negative 10 and a positive 2, because when I add those guys together, I get negative 8. Because my leading coefficient is 1, that makes the factoring here significantly easier. Okay, so now I'm going to find my roots, or my zeros. And how do I find my roots? I set h of t equal to 0. So I'm going to say 0 equals negative 5 times t minus 10 times t plus 2. Okay, so that means that my roots are going to be t equals 10 and t equals negative 2. So if I were to look back at this quick sketch that I put here, that means that if I were to extend this graph right here, I know that this value here is negative 2 because that's a root, and I know that this value here is 10. And don't forget that your vertex will always occur halfway in between these two values, okay? So your axis of symmetry is going to be the average of your roots. Because again, if I take the average of my roots here, the axis of symmetry will be halfway in between there. So my axis of symmetry will happen at 10 plus negative 2 all over 2, or 8 over 2, which is 4. So then I need to find h of 4 to find my value. Sorry about that, to find my value when time is 4. So I'm going to plug it back into the original equation. So I'm going to do negative 5 times 4 squared plus 40 times 4 plus 100. So I end up getting 4 squared is 16. Multiply that by negative 5, I get negative 80. 40 times 4 is 160 plus 100. When I put it all together, I get h of 4 is equal to 180 feet or meters. Okay, so now again, since I know that this is going to be 180 meters, it needs to reach 185 meters, so the conclusion is exactly the same right here, obviously because it's the same exact problem. Okay, so this is how you do it with factored form. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do is something called the formula for the axis of symmetry. So we're going to write the formula for the axis of symmetry. And the formula for the axis of symmetry is always going to be x equals negative b over 2a. Okay, so if my equation is h of t equals negative 5t squared plus 40t plus 100, I know that here a is negative 5, b is 40, and c is 100, because we use this from our standard form, which is what we had written down in our notes for the previous video. Okay, so instead of using x here, we're going to use t, because this is in terms of t instead of x, but it's the same idea. So we're going to say t equals negative b, so we're going to do negative 40 over 2 times a, which is negative 5. So I would get negative 40 over negative 10, which is 4. So again, my axis of symmetry here occurs when t equals 4, just like we figured out that our axis of symmetry here would also occur when t equals 4. Then I just have to find out what h of 4 is, and we already did all that work here in blue. We figured out that it's 180 meters. So our vertex is 4, 180, and it's a maximum. Okay, and so our conclusion is again the same, because again it's the same problem. But I just wanted to show you 3 different ways that you can use to find this answer. And most of the time you won't be asked to do it all 3 ways. You can choose which way you prefer, but you do need to know the formula for the axis of symmetry, and you do need to know how to complete the square. All right, question number 2. The demand function for a new magazine is P of x equals negative 6x plus 40, where P of x represents selling price in thousands of dollars of the magazine, and x is the number sold in thousands. The cost function, so here's our price function right here, And then the cost function, C of x equals 4x plus 48. Calculate the maximum profit and the number of magazines sold that will produce the maximum profit. So first of all, the first thing that we need to know is that our actual profit, our revenue is always going to be our demand function times x. Okay, so to find my revenue, remember your revenue is how much money you're just getting from your sales. Okay, to find my revenue, I'm going to take my demand function, which we figured out is P of x equals negative 6x plus 40. So we're going to do negative 6x plus 40, and we're going to multiply it by x. Now when I distribute the x through, I get that my revenue function is going to be negative 6x squared plus 40x. Okay, so this is a key piece of information that you need to know right here. All right, awesome. So now we know our revenue. We know how much money we're going to make. But I want to know my profit. And to find profit, so we'll do capital P of x for profit, okay, this time instead of for our selling price. We know our profit is going to be our revenue minus our cost. Okay, so that means that our profit function is going to be equal to the revenue, which is negative 6x squared plus 40x, and then I'm going to subtract the cost, which is 4x plus 48. Okay, so then when I distribute the negative through, right here, I end up getting that P of x is negative 6x squared plus 40x minus 4x plus 48. So then I get P of x is equal to negative 6x squared plus 36x plus 48. So this right here is the profit function. This is what the profit function is represented by. Okay, so that's key. I need to know the profit function. Well, I want to know my maximum profit. So that means that I have to find the vertex of my profit function. Well, to find the vertex, I'm going to do x equals negative b over 2 times a. Or I could complete the square, or I could find the roots. But I want to do it this way because this is the newest way, and I want to make sure you guys all understand how to do this. So again, I'm going to take a look at my equation here, and I can see that my a value is negative 6, the b value is 36, and the c value is 48. So I'm going to do x equals negative b, or negative 36, over 2 times a, which is negative 6. So I end up getting negative 36 over negative 12, which is 3. So I know that my axis of symmetry is going to occur when x equals 3. But if you remember, whenever we have any type of a function, our axis of symmetry always goes through our vertex. So we know this is going to be 3 comma something, but the question is, what is that something? What's the corresponding y value? And to figure that out, I'm going to calculate P of 3. The profit when there are 3,000 magazines, because x stands for the number sold in thousands, okay? So I'm going to do negative 6 times 3 squared plus 36 times 3 plus 48. Okay, so I end up getting P of 3 is equal to, well, 3 squared is 9, so negative 6 times 9 is negative 54. Okay, and then 36 times 3 gives me 108, and then I'm going to add 48 to that. Okay, so then I end up getting P of 3 is equal to negative 54 plus 108 is 54, plus 48 is 102. Okay, so based on all that information right here, I can say that the maximum profit is going to be $102,000, okay, and that the number of magazines sold that will produce this profit has to be 3,000 magazines, because we figured that out right here, that 3 right here is the x value that we need in order to get our vertex. So our vertex occurs when x equals 3, pretty much, okay? So we can say here, therefore, the maximum profit is $102,000, Okay, and this will occur when 3,000 magazines are sold. And that's how I do this type of a question. All right, have a great day.